Welcome in, everyone. Ready for a deep dive.
Always.
Okay, great. Today, we're tackling a career path that's, well, not for everyone, but so crucial, becoming a sexual violence counselor. We've got some great material from RoleCatcher to dig into. They really get into the nitty-gritty, which is
The
awesome.
RoleCatcher doesn't mess around. They go deep.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, before we even get into the skills and all that, can we just acknowledge the emotional weight of this kind of work?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, that's a huge part of what RoleCatcher emphasizes. It's heavy stuff. They're upfront about the potential for burnout, the emotional toll it can take.
Yeah, they're basically saying, look, this isn't about just landing a job. It's about really dedicating yourself to something pretty profound.
Right. It's about making a difference in the lives of people who've experienced some of the toughest things imaginable.
Exactly. So how do they even begin to unpack that? What stood out to you about their approach?
Well, one thing that struck me is how they highlight the dual focus of this work. It's not just about supporting survivors, which is obviously critical,
Right.
but it's also about addressing these problematic sexualized behaviors in children.
Oh, wow. I hadn't thought about that. That's interesting.
Yeah, it's like a preventative aspect,
Yeah.
trying to break this cycle of harm.
So it's not just about dealing with the aftermath. It's about preventing it in the future. Powerful stuff.
Exactly. And that really speaks to the complexity of this role. It's not easy. And that's where I think RoleCatcher's emphasis on specific skills comes in.
They actually rank them, right? Like which ones are most important.
They do. And the one that jumped out at me was social perceptiveness.
Okay, I can see why that would be huge in this field, but what does it actually mean in practice?
So imagine this. You're sitting across from someone who's just shared their deepest trauma.
Okay, heavy, but go on.
They might not have the words to express what they're going through, or they might be hesitant to share everything.
So how do you even begin to counsel someone in that situation?
That's where social perceptiveness comes in. Being able to read their body language, their tone of voice, those subtle cues that reveal so much more than words ever could.
It's like you're reading between the lines, picking up on those unspoken things.
Exactly. It's about being attuned to their emotional state, even when they can't articulate it themselves. And that, as you can imagine, can be incredibly draining.
Which brings us back to that potential for burnout we were talking about. It's like they're saying this job requires emotional intelligence, for sure, but also emotional resilience, like big time.
Absolutely. You can't pour from an empty cup.
So how do you even start building that kind of resilience? You can't just tell someone, be resilient.
Right. It takes actual work. And RoleCatcher gets that. They dedicate a whole section to self-care and burnout prevention.
Okay, makes sense. What kind of stuff are they recommending?
It's not revolutionary, but it's important. Stuff like setting boundaries, making sure you have good supervision, having actual self-care practices.
Yeah, like actually taking care of yourself.
Yeah, exactly. You can't be there for your clients if you're running on empty. And that resonated with me. It's about making this work sustainable.
Because you don't want people burning out and leaving the field, right?
Exactly. It's like, how can we make this a long-term thing? And of course, RoleCatcher doesn't shy away from the fact that it's a competitive field.
Oh, yeah, I bet. Especially for people just starting out.
For sure. But they offer some good advice on how to stand out.
Like what? Give me the inside scoop.
Hands-on experience is key. Having a degree is great, but actually working with survivors of trauma, that's huge.
So internships, volunteering, that kind of thing.
Absolutely. It shows you're serious,
You're not just talking the talk, you're walking the walk.
Exactly. And here's where it gets interesting to say. They suggest building a portfolio.
A portfolio.
Ugh.
For counseling, what does that even look like?
Right. It's not the usual thing, but it's smart. You can write anonymized case studies, focus on specific techniques you've used.
So you're showing what you've learned, how you approach things, without giving away confidential information.
Exactly. You can talk about using trauma-informed care, or how you've advocated for clients, that kind of thing.
So it's like showcasing your skills in action. I like it.
And then, of course, tailoring your resume and cover letter to highlight those transferable skills.
Okay, so let's say you volunteered at a crisis hotline. You've got some experience. What are some of those skills that would be gold in this field?
Active listening, for sure. Being able to really hear and validate someone, even when it's tough.
And empathy, right, like really connecting with what they're going through.
Huge. And then communication. Being able to explain things clearly and compassionately.
Which is so important when you're dealing with such sensitive stuff.
Absolutely. And then problem solving. This work throws curveballs all the time. You have to think on your feet.
It's like being a therapist and a detective at the same time.
Right. You're gathering information, figuring out the best way to support someone, and all while managing your own emotional well-being. It's a lot.
It is. RoleCatcher mentioned technology playing a bigger role in this field too, right?
Yeah, and it's interesting. On one hand, it can be amazing for connecting people with resources.
Like support groups, hotlines, even therapy apps. There's so much out there now.
Exactly. And for case management, data collection, even training.
So it's not replacing human connection, it's more like adding to it.
Yeah, I think that's the key. Technology can be a powerful tool, but it's not the whole picture. We still need those human connections, that empathy that can't be replicated by an algorithm.
Absolutely. And it's not just about individual support either, right? It's about addressing the bigger picture, the systems that allow sexual violence to happen in the first place.
You got it. RoleCatcher touches on this, but it's something worth digging into more deeply. Because if we want to really create change, we can't just focus on the individual level. We have to look at those root causes.
So things like advocating for policy changes, challenging those harmful social norms, educating people about consent.
Exactly. It's about realizing this is a societal issue that demands a societal response.
So it's like being a sexual violence counselor can be a starting point for something even bigger. You see the impact up close, and it makes you want to change the system itself.
Yeah, like a ripple effect, right? And RoleCatcher actually pointed out some other career paths that might appeal to someone drawn to this kind of work.
Oh yeah, they did have that section. What were some of those? I'm trying to remember.
Victim advocate, which makes sense, but also like youth information worker, even childcare social worker.
Wow, that's quite a range. So what connects those, would you say?
Well, it seems like they all involve being a voice for those who might not have one,
Yeah.
whether it's working directly with survivors or trying to prevent harm before it happens.
Right, like stopping that cycle before it even starts.
Exactly.
Which brings us back to those transferable skills. Even if someone doesn't become a counselor, this field equips you with some pretty amazing tools.
Oh, for sure. Active listening, empathy, communication, problem solving, those are valuable no matter what you do.
And not just in your career either, in your personal life too, right?
Absolutely. It's like these skills make you a better human.
That's a good point. It's not just a job, it's a way of being.
Exactly.
I love that. It's like RoleCatcher is saying, even if your path zigs and zags, this field gives you something really valuable.
I think so. It's about cultivating this deep compassion, a commitment to making things better.
Beautifully said. And I think that's a great takeaway for our listeners. It's not just about this one career path, but about finding your way to make a difference, however that looks for you.
Right. And if this conversation got even one person thinking, hey, maybe I could do something, then I feel like we've done our job.
Totally. So to anyone listening, if you feel that pull, that little nudge to get involved,
Don't ignore it.
seriously, the world needs people who care, who want to help.
And don't get overwhelmed thinking you need all the answers. Just start somewhere. Even a small act of kindness can make a difference.
So true. All right, folks, that wraps up our deep dive into the world of sexual violence counseling. We hope you found it insightful and, hey, maybe even a little inspiring. Until next time, keep learning, keep asking questions, and keep being the change you want to see in the world.